What's up, my peoples, and welcome to another episode of The Wheel Life. My name is John, and today I'm going to share 10 tips on how to stay sane during this coronavirus quarantine. Someone like myself who is a quadriplegic and has a spinal cord injury, there have been many times in my life over the course of the 14 years I've been in this chair when I've had problems and health issues that have left me pretty much isolated from the outside world. And it's kind of similar to being quarantined in a way. There have been times where I've had surgeries that have laid me up in hospital beds for months at a time. There have been pressure sores that I've had to deal with that have kept me locked up in my bedroom for months at a time. So people like myself and others in the spinal cord community have faced issues that have kept them isolated at certain times in their lives that kind of make us experts at being quarantined and not losing our minds, even though sometimes we want to lose our minds. So today I wanted to share some tips and tricks that I've learned over the years on how to stay sane, and how to keep a good attitude and keep focused and keep pushing forward in these trying times. So without further ado, let's get down to it. Tip number one on my many tips on how to stay sane during quarantine is to focus on what you can still do and stop focusing on what you cannot do. Because it's so easy to focus on what we can't do instead of focus on what we can do. When I was injured, I lost so much of my ability to do everything I knew how to do. I turned into basically a grown man-child for many years of my life. And it's so easy in those times to focus on what you can't do instead of what you can do. So, it's so easy for us in this time of quarantine to be like, I'm stuck at home. I have to be home. But what we should be looking at is I get to be home. I have this rare and unique opportunity to spend more time at home than probably we ever have. We can spend time with family and just by ourselves in quiet time. And that's kind of rare in America, in the world, really, in our everyday lives. We're always so busy with work, with this or that. This is a rare opportunity to just take some time to yourself and find joy. It's important. So that's tip number one, all right? Focus on what you can do instead of what you cannot do. Shift that focus, right? Let's go with tip number two. So tip number two on how to stay sane during quarantine is to maybe try a new hobby. Get those creative juices a-flowing. There's many things in your life that you've probably wanted to try, but you haven't had time to try. Well, guess what? You got nothing but time now. So there are many different things. You can go on Pinterest. Maybe there's a hobby you always looked at and you said, maybe I'll give that a go. And you just haven't had time, but now you do. So, there are many things. Like in our house, what we've been doing a lot of is puzzle making. Thank you, Mabel. Look at that beautiful puzzle that we have made in this household. Another thing that I have been doing a lot of in my personal time, and it's very strange because I have no hand function, but I do it with my mouth. Mabel, come around this way and show them. I have been making Legos. Look at these Legos. I made these all on my own without zero hand function. I use my mouth a lot for all the stuff I do. I'll make a video later on how I do that because it's pretty interesting. So, in this time of solitude and confinement, try to think of some fun things to do. Make a list. Check it twice. I also have explored cooking, my culinary skills. I even used a crock pot the other day. Never knew what a crock pot was in my life until the other day. Made a delicious meal. So there are many different things you can try. That is if you can find food on the shelves. People, stop hoarding stuff. You're insane. Anyways, so that's tip number two. Let's go to tip number three. Tip number three for how to stay sane during quarantine is reading a book. A good book can take us many places, but I'm going to give you the real good book, the greatest good book. The Bible, right? It doesn't matter if we're in crisis or not, we should try to read our Bibles anyways, because it's just the best book there is. Best book there ever was, the best book there ever will be, right? So anyways, in crisis times, the first book you need to crack open is your Bible. Get on your knees and pray, right? So, but besides the Bible, there are so many books that can take us many different places. You might feel trapped, you might feel like you're in an insane asylum and you want to go to the beach. You can't go to the beach. Get a book about a beach. A good book can transport you anywhere, but the good book can bring peace and joy no matter where you are in your life. So open that Bible, read that Bible, love that Bible. All right, my peoples, tip number 4 on how to stay sane during quarantine is watch a good series on Netflix, Hulu, whatever. You pick a good series, you watch that series, you get some friends to watch it with you online, not in person. You discuss that on the internet with your friends, and it's a great way to pass time. We're overloaded with information, whether that be YouTube, whether that be Netflix, Hulu, HBO, whatever it is. There's many different series that are great and wonderful that you can check out. Tell me in the comments what you have been watching during your downtime in quarantine. We all have some stuff we love to watch, so tell me what you love to watch. Tell me what you've been checking out and what's been keeping your mind off of all the craziness. Because if we watch the news too much sometimes we go nuts, So it's good to have a little bit of escapism in a show or a movie or whatever. Get a classic, get a new one. There's so much to pick from. That's tip number 4. Guys, tip number 5 on our quarantine staying sane list is there's many ways we can stay connected with people, without even leaving the house. We have FaceTime, we have Zoom, we have Skype, we have all these different things that we can have face-to-face connections with people right in our pockets with our cell phones. At the push of a button, we're connected with people around the world. And sometimes we can take advantage of that and forget how special that really is. But one thing I think would be really fun and interesting to do during this time, it's kind of a lost art, is writing your friends and family a letter, right? It's kind of funny how snail mail, like regular mail, has become something that we get really excited about. When a lot of times we used to take it for granted, right? So yeah, write someone a letter, draw them a picture, do whatever, get a pen pal. It could be fun. That's tip number 5. All right, guys, so tip number 6 on staying sane during quarantine is maybe to get a little exercise in. Gyms are closed, right? The majority of gyms anyways are all closed. We're not supposed to be in 6 feet of each other. So you can do exercise at home. And there's nothing that can lift a mood sometimes better than, pumping a little iron. And you might not have any iron to pump. I sure don't. But, you can do some stretches, you can get some soup cans and do some curls, whatever it may take. Sometimes to get those endorphins flowing, it just feels good to move around. So I would encourage you to, there are apps on your phone that give you different exercise programs. Pick one, try it, and I tell you, when I come out of quarantine, the next time you see me, I'm going to be so jacked that I can't even reach my tires. I'm not even going to be able to push around. All right, that's tip number 6. Let's go. All right, guys, tip number 7 on how I like to stay sane and how I know that will help you stay sane during quarantine. And it kind of goes along with what I said in tip number 3 about reading the Bible. It is prayer, right? Jesus tells us to come to him, all who are weary and burdened, and he will give us rest, right? Let me ask you a question. If you had God's direct phone number and you could text him, you could call him anytime, you would, wouldn't you? That's what prayer is, right? It is our direct line to God. And any time that I am stressed or struggling, and I know other people as well, that when they're stressed and struggling as well, the best thing you can do in times of trouble is pray, right? It says in Scripture that when we cry out to God, he hears his children. So now more than ever do we need to be praying. We need to be praying for our neighbors, for our family, for our loved ones, for our enemies. We got to be praying all the time. And that is one way that makes me feel, it gives me a peace that surpasses all understanding, right? And I pray that you will try that as well. Even if you're not a Christian, if you've never done it before, I urge you to give it a try. Talk to God, and he will give you peace. All right. Tip number 8 on how to stay sane during this whole quarantine nuttiness is to keep a journal, right? I think it's really fascinating when you keep a journal in these trying times. In everyday life, it's fascinating to keep a journal, to see how far you've come. I like to keep a thankfulness journal. Even if you just once a day write down one little thing that you are thankful for, whether it's your breath in your lungs, whether it's not being sick, or whether it's cold iced tea or whatever it may be, it's good to be constantly reminding ourselves of what we have to be thankful for. Goes kind of along with tip number 1 of focusing on the positives instead of the negatives, really. So keep a journal, and you never know, blog maybe. Just use this time to write down your feelings. And it's a good way to keep track of life and everything like that. That's tip number 8. Tip number 9. But before I get to tip number 9, I want to introduce you to a very special friend of mine. This is Ham. And ham is one of my very best friends. So tip number 9 is to spend time with some four-legged furry creatures. He's got some stuff to do during quarantine, unlike me. So yeah, I love spending time with my dogs. So many times people fail us, but dogs never really do. So I love creatures like that. Do you have any pets? What are their names? Tell me in the comments below. What kind of animals do you have? Alright, guys, my last and final tip on staying sane during the quarantine is get outside. There is no ban on being outside as long as you are like 6 feet apart from anybody else. It is so refreshing and so nice to get out in the fresh air instead of being cooped up in the house all day. There are so many things you can do. You can take a walk and take a roll, in my case, or whatever you got to do. Just get outside and get some fresh air. Those are my 10 tips for quarantine. I hope everyone has a great week. I hope everyone stays sane, and I will catch you later.